The Key to the Indian by Lynne Reid Banks. Chapter 22, A Sacred Object. As Omri stood on the stump, the hot fire on his back, feeling absolutely gutted, something came between him and the heat. He swung around toward the longhouse and saw a vast, black, looming figure. The next second it had seized him. "Gotcha, you varmint!" Omri nearly passed out. It was one of the men who had tried to murder the women and children. He, too, must have been trapped. He had hidden while the Indians were there, while the women were escaping, and now he and the other, Omri could see him too, were going to creep away through the only way out. "Where's the other of 'em?" A slight pause, and then, "There, where your feet is. Watch out, he's a-trying to run." "Oh, no, you don't." In another moment, Omri's dad had been pounced on and lifted in a coarse and filthy fist. The men stared at their captives, then at each other. Their faces wore wolfish grins. The one who held Omri squeezed him so hard he screamed. "They're real as you and me. They ain't nothing to be scared of. Try how yours squeaks when you pinches him." The other one twisted Omri's father's arm and gave a shout of glee. "Don't! Stop!" shouted Omri. The men burst out laughing. "Stop, don't!" they cried in high mocking voices. "This ain't nothing. They're more scadder than we was." "They stopped us shooting them Injun sows. Let's kill 'em. I can bite the head off mine and spit it half a mile. Half a mile, let's see you. Watch me." And he opened his cavernous, whiskey-stinking mouth and made to put Omri's head in. It was the end. Omri was sure of it. He was too exhausted to fight, and there was no hope at all. In that split second, he gave himself up to a horrible death. Something huge and heavy whistled past Omri and buried itself in the man's head. He dropped like a stone, and Omri with him. But he had a soft landing on the man's stomach. A moment later, his father dropped out of nowhere and landed beside him. They looked up and saw the second man take a flying leap over the cut ends of the poles, and then they heard a faint, brief whistle. The arrow caught him in the chest, and he seemed to pause in midair before crashing to the ground beside the palisade. Little Bear came straight to the gap in the poles. He saw Omri and his father on the chest of the dead man, and they saw him smile a little. He stepped over the stumps, picked them both up, stuck them into his belt. Then, without a word, he charged straight into the burning longhouse. Omri and his father, already half stunned with shock, could only cover their noses and mouths with their hands, but it didn't help much. They choked and coughed, and their eyes ran. Omri tried not to breathe. His eyes were tightly closed. He didn't see where Little Bear was going. He felt the heat getting worse. He saw bright red through his eyelids. His hair singeing. He smelt hair singeing. Was it his? He cowered down in remembered terror. The fire! He felt Little Bear stoop, half squashing them at his waist, then straighten, turn, and run, then a leap. Then the cold night air, blissfully smoke-free, caressed their faces and enabled them to open their smarting eyes. They were at the palisade, where the two dead men lay, one inside, one out. The one whose skull had been split by the tomahawk was staring up at them through a veil of his own blood. The other lay on his face, the arrow broken under him. Little Bear put his foot on the man's chest and wrenched out his weapon. And then they heard the crash of the roof tree of the longhouse. They heard the crash as the roof tree of the longhouse broke, and the blazing building from which they had just emerged collapsed in a mighty surge of smoke and sparks that toppled even the sharpened spikes on the stockade posts. Little Bear leapt the stumps and ran a little way uphill, stopped, turned, and looked back. "Little Bear!" The Indian's hands closed round Omri and lifted him level with his face. He was breathing hard. "Forgive me," he said in his deep voice. "I forget you at time I fight. I forget you at time we leave. But our women tell me your action. You are no boy. You are warrior. You are my blood brother. Little Bear will not forget you again." He then set them on the ground and knelt before them. He laid something wrapped in skins between them. "You will go back soon?" he asked. "Tomorrow morning." Little Bear hesitated, then took off one of his moccasins and laid it on the ground near them. It formed a sort of cave. "No, Little Bear, you can't march barefoot," exclaimed Omri's dad. "Cold can kill you, not me," the Indian said. "You must not die. Bright stars will make other moccasin on journey." Then he said, "Now you will know why I came back." He put his hands on the thing he had been carrying. It was flat and wrapped in buckskin. on which Omri could see beautiful decorations, colorless in the moonlight, but one whole corner was blackened by fire. Little Bear was very still. He looked as if he were praying. "This is holy," he said. Reverently he unwrapped something oval and flat and held it before his face. Omri gasped. It changed him, made him into another being. Awesome, grotesque, an otherworldly stranger. "False face holds spirit of ancestor," Little Bear said from behind the mask. "His voice called me from the fire." Omri's father was astonished. "Why are you showing it to us, Little Bear? Isn't it only for your Sachems, your holy people?" Little Bear said, "Little Bear shows you this because you helped to save our women. You came with me to save the false face from great danger. You are not like other white men. Spirited and false face wishes you to have this great honor. Old clan mother," he paused, but only for a split second, and his face showed no emotion. "She wished that I do this to show respect for little people of her dream." He put the mask into the buckskin bag. "He goes with us. Without him, no hope. No." He clasped his hands, set one set of fingers holding the other. "Link. Yes. Chain. Like covenant chain of Iroquois that holds tribes together. Holds my people together. Holds my people to the time before. Where we go now, we will be new, like babies, but born from nothing. Our ancestors must come with us." "Yes," said Omri's father. "They're your history." Omri was suddenly choked with feeling. He had the strangest impulse. He wanted to say words he knew in his heart he didn't mean. But the need was so strong he could hardly resist. He wanted to say, to beg, "Little Bear, take us with you." At that moment he could have said goodbye to his whole life, so as not to have to say goodbye to him. But he kept silent. He put out his hand, and Little Bear bent and touched it with his fingers, where once their blood had mingled. They looked into each other's eyes, and Omri knew, without knowing how he knew, that it was for the last time. "We are of one mind," the Indian said, and he rose and turned and ran, swift as a deer, up the hill and into the forest of his people. Omri and his father lay out in the open all night. Even huddled in the moccasin, they were bitterly cold, and they felt they might not survive. They could hear wolves howling in the woods. Once an owl swooped low over them, its white underparts flickering in the moonlight. They clung together, shivering and scared and almost unbearably lonely, now that Little Bear had gone. Ironically, it was probably only the fact that the rest of the stockade, the part nearest to them, suddenly blazed up some time after midnight, that saved them from the effects of the frost and from marauding animals. In the deepest, darkest part of the night, when his dad was dozing, Omri cried. He put his head and shoulders out of the moccasin cave and looked down the hill at the long house. There was little left. Each time small gusts of wind blew on it. Its embers glowed fitfully like some dying thing drawing its last painful breaths. Omri cried bitter, silent tears of sadness for his Indian and what he had left behind, and for Omri's loss of him. Just as the sky was paling, Omri could see the streaks of cloud to the east, showing the blackened, still-smoking longhouse and the abandoned fields beyond. It all ended. Omri didn't even have time to savor one final second. Only as he traveled faster than light through the layers of time, the smell of the smoked hide and the burnt wood and the unsullied earth they were lying on, and a strange, vagrant whiff of sweetgrass stayed with him in his nostrils even after he had got home. And that's the end of chapter 22.